Welcome to the Roundtable. I'm Maura Carlin. It's been 1 year since President Trump's inauguration, and it's fair to say that it's changed the lives of tonight's guests. We're talking to Debbie Friedman of We Persist and Farah Kathwari of Indivisible Westchester. Both are part of what has been called the resistance. We'd love you to join the conversation. Call, email, or tweet. The contact information's on your screen. Thank you, Debbie and Farah, for being here. Tell us about your organizations and why you got involved. We'll start with you, Debbie.
Thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm very happy to be here. I got involved last year after the election of Donald Trump with the Women's March. I felt that I needed to do something after that election, and initially actually went to my local synagogue where I'm a member and asked, could we get people or organize people to go to the march under the umbrella of the synagogue? And they were very happy to support that from a social action point of view. So anyway, we ended up with about 100 people, or over 100 people marching with us to the Women's March last year in 2017, and We Persist was an outgrowth of that.
Is it based on Elizabeth Warren and and yet she persisted?
Yes, that's where our name came from.
And you, Farah?
Well, I was also inspired by the Women's March. Last year I went down to D.C. and after that joined a local Indivisible group, and then in March joined Indivisible Westchester. And Indivisible Westchester is part of the National Indivisible movement, which did come out of the election of Donald Trump. But we focus on the local level, and we focus primarily on Westchester County, and this year we're also looking at some state issues.
Is this your resistance, shall we call it, or these movements, is it just anti-Trump, I mean just against everything he does, or is it focused?
I think we may have started as a reaction to Trump, but I think we realized very quickly that we can impact bringing progressive legislation and electing progressives to office to have better government, and government that better represents us and our values.
I would agree. I think it started off very much anti-Trump, but then when we looked at it and what it meant to us, it really meant paying attention to what was happening locally in our communities and standing up for the values that we believe in and trying to see those values carried out in who we elected, who was representing us at the local level. So it became more about what we were standing up for as opposed to just being anti-something.
We have our first question. At least one reporter called you PTA moms. Do you find that at all insulting, and what might that label infer about or imply about your activities?
Well, it's funny because I am a PTA mom, and happy that I'm able to be involved in my child's school. But I do think using that as a label is a little, it's too general. It's a little too cliche, and it
not insulting.
I wouldn't call it insulting. I do think it puts women in a box that is not fair.
Who's involved in your organizations?
We have many people. They're primarily our age, give or take. We don't have a lot of younger people yet in our group, but it's spread very much word of mouth. We've got
men and women?
Men and women. Many more women, I would say, than men, but we've got very, very active men as well. We have people from really southern Westchester and southern Connecticut, because when we initially started, anybody who wanted to march with us under an umbrella was welcome. And so we've got people from various communities in lower Westchester and southern Connecticut.
What about you, Farah? Is your group men and women?
It is. It's men and women. It's very varied in age. It's people from all over Westchester County. We have 4,000 members on our secret Facebook page, over 1,000 on our public Facebook page. We send out a weekly newsletter to about 1,600 people, and so it encompasses a lot of different kinds of people.
And does it encompass people from both sides of the political aisle?
We don't necessarily ask when people ask to join which side of the aisle they're on. I think it's anybody who wanted to be involved, we were open to. We actually, reached out to other groups as well. We're working in a lot of different areas right now, but I would venture to say that most people are progressive.
One thing that I had observed after the election was that many of the people who were marching were actually Republicans, so probably more what I guess I heard referred to as purple. Mm-hmm. And do you have people, from both sides who are more moderate in your organizations who are, involved?
Well, we certainly do. I mean, I think the Indivisible movement, it started out as a democratic response to the Republicans and to Trump. But for Indivisible Westchester, we, like Debbie said, we don't ask people what their affiliation is when they join. I am unaffiliated myself. There are other people who are unaffiliated, who are Democrat, who are Republican. I would agree that everyone is progressive and holds progressive values and is trying to hold on to the really American values that we all hold so dear that we feel are being threatened today. So it's really more about anyone's welcome to join who believes that these values are being threatened and who wants to stand up for them and push back.
We have to take a quick break, but if you stay with us, when we return, we'll discuss the women's marches. And remember, you can join the conversation. The contact information's on your screen.
You're watching the local live on LMC TV.
Welcome back. The day after Trump's inauguration, millions of women worldwide marched. And last weekend, over 1 million people marched again in the United States. It's been called the Women's Marches, and they've been both lauded and criticized. So I'm going to start by asking, particularly you, Debbie, since you were involved in the beginning, what's the purpose of those marches? I've heard a lot of people say, like, why are they marching?
I think the initial march was a reaction to the election and to what was going on, and it gave people the opportunity to say, I don't like this, I don't agree. I think throughout the year we've had a lot of rallies and protests and marches across all different types of issues, women's issues, climate issues, gun issues, various types of things. And I think people are recognizing that they want to be heard. They want to be heard. They want their voices to be heard. And that is one way to do it. It's not the only way, and it's not the only thing.
At the marches, there were signs for all those different issues. And how do you keep it all under one umbrella? Because one person might be marching for environmental rights and somebody else is marching for, pick another, something else.
When we started We Persist, I personally felt, and many of us did, that we were being bombarded because every issue seemed to be threatened and so many things were important that we wanted to focus on. And we set up different teams. Issue-based teams is what we did initially for people to work on all of those various issues. And bring that information back. I think everybody has their own passion or, the one issue maybe that they feel much more strongly about. But I think many of us are concerned about all of the issues. And that's really what's happening now, is that we feel bombarded still on a daily basis, that people's rights are being taken away, that our country isn't respected, around the world, that climate change is a real issue and that's not being recognized by a federal government. Across the board, those issues are important, and I think that we found that many of us are aligned, at least in our organization.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I don't think that, I think it's okay to have multiple voices marching together, because the marches give us a chance to show solidarity with one another, that we're supporting each other's causes, and that they're all part of this progressive movement to make our country the best it can be for all Americans and for all the people living here.
But that's based on a vision of what the best can be that not everyone agrees with.
That's true, but there will never be a wholehearted agreement across the board or across the country. I do think that everyone who marches shares a basic premise of a vision of the future of what our country should be. And even if there's disagreement amongst the people marching, that's fine.
The marches have, however, been criticized from both the right and the left, and to some extent it's for the same issue, for being not inclusive enough. Do you have a comment on that?
I actually think that there are different organizations now, even under the name Women's March and that umbrella. I'd hate to think that they were not inclusive. I think we all need to learn to speak with each other and listen to each other and be respectful of other people's positions. I think as a country we will be much better if we move in that direction. So again, I really didn't find that. I mean, I'm finding that there's a lot of solidarity coming out, very peaceful. People were respectful, they're friendly, they are expressing their point of view in a safe environment. where I think it's accepted by the people around them. At least that's what I found at the Women's March.
I sort of have two opinions. One is what Debbie said, that people who are there feel solidarity, but at the same time, I do think some people are left out or feel they're not part of it. And I do think it's important to reach out, to do coalition building. One of Indivisible Westchester's priorities this year and going forward is coalition building, and particularly with communities of color, because we recognize that the Indivisible movement it's not necessarily inclusive of communities of color. So that's an opportunity, and it's an important priority.
What impact do you think the marches have had, or do you think it's had an impact? I'll start with you on this one, Farah.
I do think it's had an impact. We saw last year with the first one, millions of people marching around the world, and whether you're just looking at the visual impact of that, or the actual messages that got across, or the motivation that was given to so many of us, I think it has had impact on many levels. And the fact that these marches continue and that the actions continue, and it's inspired so many of us to pay attention, to get involved, to be part of our communities is, this is a long-term impact we're talking about.
The marches are unprecedented in our country. We have not had these types of marches, and this number of people coming out in a long time. I actually believe that even since Vietnam, what I had heard was that the numbers were even larger than that. I'm not sure. I'm not going to quote facts on that one. But, I absolutely think that it is impactful. I think that people are standing up to say, we want to be heard, and we don't agree with what's going on, and all of these things are important to us.
Well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we return, we're going to learn about the focus going forward of both Indivisible and We Persist. So stay with us.
Hi, I'm State Senator George Latimer, and I encourage you to watch every week the local live. I was going to say something like, I live in Rye, but if I lived in Larchmont and Mamaroneck, I would watch the local live every week. And I just remind. Thank you.
Welcome back. We're now going to talk about what the goals are for 2018 for your organizations.
Okay. Well, I know for us, we realized pretty early on last year that we could really impact the local elections. And we worked very hard locally last year, helped elect George Latimer to county executive. Many of us are in Nancy Barr's district, so we got her also into office, Frank Gordon in Harrison. So we are going to continue along that vein as soon as Governor Cuomo announces the special election. Even before he announces it, we are getting to work to help elect Shelley mayor as our new New York State Senator.
And Indivisible?
Well, Indivisible Westchester has a number of priorities this year. Like We Persist, we are very concerned with getting our empty Senate seats filled, and so SD 37, which is the one we all live in, is very important. We have endorsed Shelley Mayer for State Senate for our district, and we'll be working hard to support her campaign to get the vote out. We're also interested in what happens in District 40, which Terrence Murphy is currently representing, and we're amplifying the anti-IDC movement, and especially in Pelham, and trying to get that turned around because that's in Westchester. And again, coalition building and looking at a couple of Senate races congressional races that may be in neighboring districts, but relevant for us.
Okay. Now, you mentioned help getting George Latimer elected county executive. And he was called at his inauguration and at other times a pragmatic progressive. Mm-hmm. Is that progressive enough?
From my point of view, yes. I mean, I think you have to be realistic about what types of goals you can achieve, what you can do. You need to pay attention to the finances. So yeah, I mean, I'm a true fan of him. I only got to know him really this past year, and we're very excited about what we have right now in the county, actually.
What about you, Farah?
Yes, I think it makes sense to be a pragmatic progressive. It really does. It combines the ideals with the practicalities of how to get things done.
So you won't be upset when he takes a position that isn't as progressive as you might like, because he can do a better job a little further to the middle?
Well, you know, it depends on the issue, and even if we don't fully agree with it, if it's progress, if it's going in the right direction, and if it will move things forward, then I think it makes sense.
We have another question from a viewer. Do you have a presence in the high schools or among these? You actually answered that before for your group, but what about you, Farah?
We do. There are indivisible groups in some of the local high schools, and actually in the last race we had Mamaroneck High School students working with us as well.
One of the issues that comes up is wanting to elect women, but you also want to elect progressives. If you have to choose, do you want to elect women or do you want to elect progressives?
I think it's the person who's best fit for the job, who holds the right values and ideals, whether that's a woman or a man.
And you agree with that? Okay. What keeps you going? You know, it's an ongoing, energy draining exercise. What keeps you motivated?
Well, for me, I'm in this for the long haul, and what keeps me going is, honestly, is the fact that my parents came here as immigrants, and so I was first generation, and they taught us that basically this is the best country in the world. And they really believed in the American dream. They've lived it, and they instilled that dream in us and the values of democracy and freedom. So I don't take it for granted. And so this love for my country literally is what keeps me going.
I think I'm motivated by all the people that I have met this past year plus since I started working on all of this. So many creative people, talented people, bright people, intelligent people, caring people who really want to see change and really want to make our country better. And I draw energy from all the people around me.
Thank you for joining us. Contact information for Indivisible Westchester and We Persist has been on your screen. Debbie Friedman, Farah Kathwari. I should mention that you also have another organization called Our Flag.
Yes, I do. I do.
Devoted to patriotism.
Yes, patriotism.
Thank you for joining us. And you stay with us because we'll be back in a moment with more community stories.